G'day guys, how's it going? Welcome to this episode of Aussie English, the number one place for anyone and everyone wanting wanting to learn Australian English. I hope you guys are having a ripper of a week. Weekend actually, because this will be coming out on a Sunday, hopefully. And the reason for that is that this week I went to hospital. You guys will have probably noticed this from the episode that I put up on the podcast. Which one was it? Let me just have a look here. It was the Walking with Pete one, 1250, which was I had to go to hospital. And that was meant to come out this weekend, but my lovely virtual assistant, Kate, accidentally published it early. And I don't mean to throw her under the bus. She's not in trouble. Shit happens. But she did that. And I have been so busy this week with kids home from daycare. Then we had Australia Day, which was a public holiday yesterday. I'm recording this on a Saturday. And so we had the kids at home and had to sort of come up with activities to entertain them for the day. And then today we had, we got up early. Kids were playing around at home all day, making noise, running around. And then we had swimming lessons, and Noah's and Joey's friends from daycare came to swimming as well and hung out with them there. They then had their respective swimming lessons. And then we had lunch together, which was cool. I think we had, might as well tell you guys all this stuff so that you can get some Aussie vocab, get an idea of what we eat at cafes. So we stop at the kiosk or cafe there. I have to look up the difference between these two, but a kiosk, I think, is usually like part of what would you say? It's kind of like a part of a building, part of a location where there's a place you can buy food from. I should just Google this, huh? But it's a cafe as well. Obviously, there's coffee and stuff there, but I'm used to calling these sorts of places a kiosk. A kiosk is a small open-fronted hut or cubicle from which newspapers, refreshments, tickets, etc. are sold. So I guess that's, refreshments would be like food and drink. So they're sold there, not newspapers or tickets. And then cafe, what's the definition for cafe? A small restaurant selling light meals and drinks. Yeah, I guess they overlap then. So we stopped there after the swimming lessons and after we played heaps. And what do we have? So my son is such a weirdo, right? He's a bit of a weird kid. He likes getting banana bread and having it toasted with butter on it, and that's not the weird part. And then we usually also get, as we did today, some kind of chip, right? French fries. I think these were sweet potato fries. So they're like sweet potatoes that have been cut into what look like sort of small chips and then deep fried, and you can eat them. It comes with tomato sauce. He takes the banana bread and dips it in the tomato sauce. And I don't get it. Like, it's just a weird thing to do, but he likes it. I don't know. And he also has, when he goes to my grandparents' place, he has Vegemite and jam on toast, which is uber weird. That is not an Australian thing. But it was funny, my dad tried it and he was like, actually tastes pretty good. It's probably that sweet and salty kind of combination, right? Like salted caramel. So anyway, he had his banana bread with butter on it, and we got some of these sweet potato fries, which are really good, and then a bunch of toasted sandwiches with cheese and chicken. So chicken and cheese toasties. There's some Aussie slang for you. Toasty is a toasted sandwich, because my daughter, for some reason, she doesn't really eat much chicken on its own anymore or cheese on its own anymore. But when it's combined together into a toasted sandwich, she'll demolish it, right? She'll smash it. She'll absolutely devour it. That's what she had. And they had juices, some apple juice, I think is what Joey had. And Noah at the moment, he loves his spicy drinks, he calls them, which are fizzy drinks. And we got him a kombucha, and he likes that. And I like trying to get him ones that don't have much sugar in them. Because, he's crazy enough as it is, like me. No extra sugar or caffeine required. So we did that, came home. I will admit that I had a bit of a sleep whilst my wife hung out with the kids for a bit. Although they were pretty knackered, they were pretty wrecked, and so I don't think they were much work. They just kind of sat in front of the TV and recuperated for an hour or two. And then the same friends from swimming came over and hung out for probably a good 2 hours. And they made cupcakes. And we've just had dinner. Sort of scrounged around. That's a good Aussie phrasal verb, to scrounge around. I think it would be spelt Scrounge, to scrounge. And it's kind of like to fossick, to look for, when you scrounge, it kind of gives me an idea of someone searching through something with their hands, right? And again, I can just look this up. Let's type in definition scrounge. I wonder if it's an Australian specific thing. To seek to obtain something, typically food or money, at the expense or through the generosity of others by stealth. Or by stealth. Right. Yeah, okay. To get something by asking for it instead of buying it or working for it. Okay, I get it. To gather something you want or need from what is available. There you go. So there you go. Scrounging around, foraging, fossicking. These all kind of mean the same thing. They overlap quite a bit. So we scrounged around, had some leftovers. I had pizza for the third day in a row because the kids tend to ask for pizza. They're always like, let's get a pizza on a Friday or a Thursday night. And then they have like half a piece each. And my wife has some. And then there's just all this pizza left over. And I'm like, well, don't throw it away. Put it in the fridge and I'll chip away at it for the next few days, I guess. I'll take one for the team. Anyway, that's what we've been up to today. And now I am currently sitting on my bed with a cold drink. Let me open that one up and take a quick sip. Sorry for the noise. And a lozenge in my mouth because I'm getting a bit of a sore throat. So knock on wood. Hopefully I am not going to get sick. But I have your questions here. So I'm going to try and go through some from this week, but we didn't get a lot in. So again, if you guys want to ask questions for the Q&A, remember to jump on the Instagram page, just search for Aussie English and it should come up. You'll see my logo. And on Mondays, I put out a story asking you guys to ask me whatever you want to ask, right? Yeah. Okay. The first question is an interesting one. Could you please explain the national anthem? I have to sing it soon. So this comes from Pram Shwa. Okay, Promise. I remember this guy. He used to be in the academy, so I hope you're well, Promise. Explain it. I don't really know what there is to explain. Like, what do you mean when you say explain? Do you mean the words of the Australian national anthem? Let me get the lyrics for you because I can sort of only remember. I'm not a really fair dinkum Aussie, right? I can only remember a few lines. Let me get it up here. So, okay, Australians, let us rejoice. That would be like Australians, like someone's addressing Aussies and saying, can you let us celebrate? Can you let us rejoice? Let us all celebrate together. For we are one and free. I guess that would be like we're a single nation and we are free. So this would be that we became a nation after federation in 1901, I believe it was, right? So Henry Parkes was the one who brought it all through. And then, we became a single nation instead of a whole bunch of colonies that were part of the Commonwealth. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. So with golden soil, I guess would be the idea that the soil that we have, at least on the east and southwest coasts of Australia, is abundant, right? Like we can grow a lot of things in it. It's what would you say? It's a wealthy land, right? We can do a lot with what we have, and that would be wealth for toil. Toil is an interesting word here. I think it would be like to play with, right? To be able to use. Again, I can look this up. It's not a common word that a lot of us will use, and it sort of reminds me of Shakespeare, I think, right? Toil and trouble. To work extremely hard or incessantly is to toil. We toiled away. So with wealth for toil. So there's wealth for us to work on. Our home is girt by sea. Girt means, I think it's like coasted by or edged by. So the idea of Australia being girt by ocean would be the idea that it is it's surrounded by ocean. So gird is the verb, G-I-R-D. Girt is the past tense. Encircle with a belt or band. I guess that's where we get the word girdle, right? I think it's girdle. Is that like an old phrase for a belt or something? So our home is girt by sea. So our home country is encircled, is surrounded by ocean of beauty rich and rare. Oh, no, sorry, I've skipped one. Our land abounds in nature's gifts. So abounds would be like to have a lot of that thing. So our land, the land of Australia, is full of nature's gifts. So again, that would be like animals and plants and, everything that's natural in the natural world. of beauty, rich and rare. So are very beautiful things that are rare as well. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia's fair. I guess that would be throughout every stage of history, allow Australia to be fair, to be amazing. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing. I guess that would be like, in joyful strains, to strain yourself but joyfully, allow yourself to sing, advance Australia fair. So there you go. That's the sort of first verse, I guess, of the national anthem. There's another one, but maybe we just call it quits there. But yeah, it's poetic, right? And I'm not sure of the history of who wrote it. We can just look that up, right? Who wrote Advance Australia Fair? It was written by Peter Dodds McCormick. Written and composed by Peter Dodds McCormick in 1878, who proclaimed Australia's national anthem. Okay, oh my God, okay. So it was proclaimed Australia's national anthem only on the 19th of April in 1984. So three years before I was born is when this actually became our anthem. I was expecting it to be a lot older than that. And it's interesting that the song and its lyrics were already, 160 years old. So there you go. And funnily enough, Peter Dodds McCormick is originally from Glasgow, Port Glasgow in the United Kingdom. So there you go. Okay, let me keep having a look at these questions. Okay. Okay, Hadaza said, can you give an academy membership to Ronaldo and teach him how to speak Australian English and learn about our culture? Yeah, I'm sure I should send Ronaldo an email with a voucher to sign up for the academy for a year. I'm sure he'll definitely take me up on it. That'd be pretty amazing. Imagine that. I'm just like, chilling out, doing one of the academy calls, and all of a sudden Ronaldo just appears and is like, "G'day, mate." That'd be amazing. Oh my gosh, that'd blow me away. I think I'd be stunned. I would be without words. Okay. Hi Pete, I'm hooked on visiting the Murray River. Do you have some stories about there? I'd love to hear. This is from Tatsuki. So the Murray River. Well, the Murray River is the river that separates most of Victoria from New South Wales, the two states, right? So it sort of traces the border pretty much all the way from northwest Victoria, from, sort of Mildura, Robinvale, Swan Hill, then down to Echuca in the centre of Victoria, over to Albury, and then into Kosciuszko National Park, which is kind of like where the river starts, right? It starts in those mountains where all the rain happens. Where it all happens, you know what I mean, where it takes place, right? So, yeah, and then obviously east of that is the rest of Victoria. So that's kind of like the sharp tip on the nose of Victoria, which is this sort of weird straight line that just goes to the sea out near Mallacoota. It also goes through the states of Victoria and New South Wales all the way to about Renmark, which is part of South Australia. And then, does it go through Adelaide? No, it goes around Adelaide. And then I think, it comes out at Lake Alexandrina? Is that what it is? Which is near, what's the closest place there? It's sort of in rural South Australia, right? Near Victor Harbour. And let me zoom out a bit, sort of towards Kangaroo Island, a bit east of Kangaroo Island. So it's a pretty huge river, right? It's a very big sort of drainage system. It goes into the Murray-Darling Basin. So all the water comes out of sort of the east along the Murray and out of the north along the Darling River, I believe. There's lots of interesting things about the Murray. I don't really know a great deal about it. There's some really cool TV shows. I'm trying to remember the name of the show. I think it's like All the Rivers Run. Is that what it's called? All the Rivers. Let me just quickly look this up. All the Rivers Run. All the Rivers. Is it that show? Let me type this in for you guys. Forgive me for the All the Rivers Run. Yeah, it was a mini series from 1983 to 1990, and it had Sigrid Thornton, and John Waters in it. Okay, and it's about the steamboats that worked along, or the paddle boats that worked along the Murray River, sort of transporting goods and people and everything like that. And so it's a period film set in, I think it would be the 1800s. It would be the mid to late 1800s, I believe. And it's kind of really cool. So it's kind of the main characters, Philadelphia Gordon and Brenton Edwards. I think they're based on actual historical figures who survived a shipwreck and were orphaned off the coast of Victoria. And I think they climbed up in Lockhart Gorge. If you guys have been down the Great Ocean Road to, well, obviously to Lockhart Gorge, but to the 12 Apostles, there was a shipwreck in the 1800s around there, and I think it was only these two people who survived, right? At least these two characters. I don't know if they actually ended up working on the Murray River or whatever. I think it's actually quite an interesting story if you look into it, but yeah, I think from memory that was the thing. There was this really cool kind of historical twist to it. You know, it's kind of, what would you call it? It's like, is it fictory? What do you call it? Where it's like historical fiction? Well, I guess that's it. Historical fiction. So that was really cool. Gives you a lot of history and shows you these kind of like paddle boats that worked up and down the Murray River, because there was a lot of trade going up and down the river, because that was the cheapest way of just getting stuff around. Another interesting thing was that back in the day, back in that period, in Australia, all the different colonies had like different standards for the width of their train tracks. And so anytime the trains got to the edge of a state, or, well, to a colony at the time, and had to transport their goods across to the next colony, they couldn't just drive the same train. They had to get all the goods off and then put them onto another train and have them all go. And it was funny because, yeah, they all had different sized tracks so that they couldn't drive the same trains around the country. And I think that had to all get changed, obviously, around Federation's sort of era, in order to make it so that, yeah, one train could like cross over into different states. At least I think that's the case. I think I've covered a lot of this in the past, but my memory's kind of a bit rusty. Okay, but yeah, go to the Murray River. It's a beautiful place, depending on which part of it you go to. I think the further west you go, the more it's going to be a little dry and sort of, you know, desert around the Murray River, and it's kind of like a different environment. But then the further east you go towards the mountains, the wetter it's going to get, right? There's kind of like a more mesic zone that in that direction where there's a lot more rainfall, and so it's a different environment. But I was doing some work there when I was doing my master's degree at university, studying goannas, and they were all along that river. Ironically, my work discovered that gene flow was occurring down the rivers. So I think there were these flooding events that would take place and wash a whole bunch of goannas from like northern Australia down the Darling River, and from the eastern part of the Murray River down the Murray River towards the west. And gene flow would occur along the rivers, which was, you know, a really interesting find. I think you'll actually be able to find the paper if you wanted to read up on it under Peter Smithson, if you search it in Google Scholar. Yeah, and the goanna was Varanus varius, the lace monitor. Or tree goanna. Okay. Let's keep looking through. I've got some like screenshots here of all the questions, but I think I answered some of them last time, so forgive me if I repeat any of these. Okay. I think I answered that one. Is there a difference between Melbourne's accent and Sydney's accent? I'd say no. Like if I'm chatting to any Aussies, the real differentiating factor is going to be how cultivated, general or broad the accents are, you know, again, broadly speaking. So the closer they are to sort of like a broad accent, right, where they're using longer vowels and it's a bit more nasal and everything, it's not going to necessarily tell me where they're from geographically. You know, like I'm not just going to hear a broad accent and be like, oh, they're from Alice Springs, you know, they're from this exact town in this exact region of Australia, but I will know a bit about that they're regional, right? If they have a broad accent, they're more than likely born and raised in regional areas, which just means, probably a few hundred kilometres or more away from the large cities in Australia. Perhaps in farming towns, those sorts of areas are correlated with broad accents, right? It can also, accent too is going to tell me a bit about your socio-economic background. I think people in Australia will have a sort of more general or cultivated accent is associated with being in the cities and say like better education and being wealthier. It's not an exact correlation, but if someone spoke to me with, say, very cultivated English, my assumption would be highly educated and probably wealthy, or an actor. In which case they're probably really poor, statistically. Whereas if they were speaking like a bogan, again, with a broad kind of accent and depending on the words they're using and everything like that, again, it's not going to tell me where they're from, but it's going to tell me about their class, right? Their socio-economic status. Because you're not going to come across too many people who are upper class, their family's always been incredibly wealthy and they went to a private school. You're not going to find too many of those kinds of people speaking with a really bogan accent. Right? And vice versa, you're not going to find a lot of people from, very poor socioeconomic backgrounds speaking with a cultivated accent. And these are kind of like broad strokes, a linguist would be able to tell you a lot more about this, but that would be the basic idea. I don't think there are many things, unless you were to use some of the vowel sounds that Queenslanders use. I think I mentioned this previously where my grandfather says get off or get off instead of get off. So he says like an or sound instead of an ah sound, and I think he would say school instead of school. If I hear those sorts of vowels, I'm probably going to be like, okay, they're from Queensland. But again, Queensland's massive, right? So I couldn't tell you where. My assumption would be, though, if you use those kinds of vowel sounds, that you would be from Queensland. I think there's also a few certain sort of sounds that are used by people from the better off parts of Adelaide. I haven't met anyone who does this yet, and I haven't really looked into it, but I've been told about this, that like my dad will say that there's an area, of like rich old Adelaide where people used to speak with a certain weird accent. They would say a certain sound in the English language that would be strange compared to the rest of us. There's also, broadly speaking, the trap bath split, right? And so this is kind of like a geographical feature of people. I think I'm going to get this around the wrong way, but I think it's people from the southeast of Australia tend to use the long R sound to say things like castle, right? Castle, France, castle. They're going to say R in those cases, but then there's other areas where they would say castle in France and pants. Well, actually, pants is a bad example. Everyone says pants. But there's a few of these words where it can be either one of those vowel sounds. Could be France, could be France, could be castle, could be castle. There's a whole bunch of them. But I found that it's kind of mixed up. Like my brother-in-law who grew up in the same town that I grew up in says castle. I always sort of cringe when he does that because I'm like, it's castle, mate. What are you talking about? Castle. And I think it's probably more to do with when you were growing up, what did the people around you say? And if they said castle instead of castle, it just, for whatever reason, gets, fixed in your vocab and your pronunciation and everything, and that's just how you say it. But yeah. So yes, long story short, there are differences. They're pretty minute, and they're going to tell you more about class and maybe which region of Australia, right? If they're from rural or regional areas versus, say, the big cities, you're going to get that idea. But again, I just would not feel confident meeting an Australian, listening to them talk, and being able to guess, within 1,000, 2,000 kilometres where they're from in Australia with no other context, right? With no other information besides their accent. Okay. Daniel's asked here, what does C's mean when saying goodbye? Thanks, mate. C's, and he spelled it Seez. C's. I've never actually seen that spelled that way. My assumption would be someone has contracted Sears. That may be what you're hearing. See us later. I think that's probably what you're hearing. See yous later. And it is a spoken contraction of see yous, use like the plural of you, although it's kind of redundant, right? But some Australians use that, use. What are yous doing? Hey, yous over there, what are yous doing? It's kind of associated with Bogan or, sort of regional accents to some degree. It's a little informal, right? So most Aussies don't use it, but you may hear it from time to time. Again, in my experience, most Aussies, what do I know? But yes, I think that's probably what you're thinking of. I think that's what you're hearing, seers. But there's a slight little y in there, see yous later. And that'll be what they're saying, see yous or see yous later. And it's just shortening of see you later or see yous later. See ya, right? See ya, see yous, see ya later, see yous later. I think that'll be it. How can I move to Australia being 18 with no money? Good question, mate. Well, I think for one, you're going to need enough money to get over here. It's going to depend which country you're from. If you come over from certain countries, you need to have a certain amount of savings and all that sort of information. There needs to be a reason for it. It's easier for some countries. It's not easy for some others. So again, based on your name, yeah, it looks maybe Portuguese, so maybe you're Brazilian. If that were right, if you were, say, South American, I think it's pretty easy for you to come over to Australia, but I think you have to have a certain amount of savings, so that's where the no money thing can probably get in your way. Like my wife, when she first came to Australia, had to have, I think it was like the equivalent of $20,000 or something in her bank. And again, I'm no expert on migration to Australia, so don't quote me on this, but I would say look up what the requirements are and what kind of visa you want. Are you wanting to just come on a holiday? In which case you probably don't need any savings. You just need enough money to come here and survive here whilst you're here. Are you wanting to migrate here? Like you wanting to get a working visa and then work towards having permanent residency and then, citizenship and all that jazz. In which case, you would need a certain amount of money to support yourself to come out here on a working holiday visa. I think, again, there'll be a requirement based on where you're from. And I think that'll probably be it. If you're 18 and you've got enough money, I think you can come and do whatever you want, really. The world is your oyster, mate. I'm going to start my business in Melbourne. What can you tell me to succeed? Do you have podcasts on it? This one comes from Eddie. Again, I don't know what the business is, mate. You should have given me some information about it, right? You could be selling coffee, in which case you'll probably crush it, although there's a lot of competition. But you could also be selling, I don't know, tutus. Like firewood. I don't know. I would say just try it. Start it. Don't let perfect get in the way of good, right? Don't let perfect destroy good or be the enemy of good. Get something that is good enough to get out there and sell and then start doing it, right? Get that minimal viable product. Get some idea together. Put it together. Get it up and running. Put it out there and see how it goes. And expect that things may not work and they may fail, but you just have to keep trying different things, right? Like Aussie English wasn't something I ever planned on becoming a huge success and becoming a full-time job for me. I was studying at university and then I tried starting up a company with a friend selling coffee in Melbourne where we would deliver it on a bike, and we just didn't really know what we were doing. We sold a few different things to different people for a while, probably lost a little bit of money, maybe made $100, $200, but it was a good exercise, putting together our website, getting a product, getting packaging, our business cards, our logo, all that sort of stuff was really fun, learning all that sort of stuff. So I would just say, just start, get into it, start learning about all the different facets that, is comprised in small business, when you're working in a small business, and just give it a go, right? Try it and listen to your customers. Try and find something that people need, that they want. Find a problem that you can solve it, and then work out how to do a better job of it, expand, add other products, solve other problems, everything like that, right? But really the biggest thing is just give it a try. Give it a try. Podcasts-wise, I don't think I have any really on small business, but I would suggest listening to the Smart Passive Income podcast. That was a really good one. I used to listen to that a lot. You probably heard me talk about it when I was living in Melbourne and working in a restaurant. at the end of my PhD. This would have been about 2016, 2017. I used to listen to that podcast every single day, and it just gave me loads of ideas, right? Because effectively, Pat Flynn, the guy who runs the podcast, has other businesses, online businesses, on the podcast to chat about, what it is they do, their trials and tribulations, the problems they've had, how they overcame them, how much money they make, what they plan to do next, all that sort of stuff. So just getting exposure to loads of conversations with other small business owners about their problems, about things they've done, what they've had to do to overcome everything, blah, 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 is super helpful. And it'll probably help give you loads and loads of ideas. The other thing too would be just find a mentor or find other people who run small businesses and get to know them, talk about your problems with them, discuss ideas, everything like that. It's really helpful when you can bounce ideas off other people and get their feedback. So hopefully that helps. Okay, this one comes from Mustafa. How much time does it take to learn Australian accents and idioms, etc.? I mean, how long is a piece of string, right? It could take you months to learn a significant amount that is going to sort of get you by, right? Like if you were studying every single day, consuming loads of content, podcasts, movies, TV shows, learning vocab, everything like that, you could have, a really huge Australian vocab. You could have a pretty good Aussie accent, I reckon, within a few months, if you could manage a schedule like that, right? Like when I was learning French, when I first started the podcast, I think I was studying French probably between 4 and 8 hours a day. And I know that sounds crazy. It wasn't 8 hours every single day, but I remember when I was sort of writing down and keeping track of all the time I was spending learning French or, consuming French, practicing French, talking with people in French, it was usually about minimum 4 hours a day, because I would listen, I would, walk to work, and it would be about an hour walk or commute, and I would have a podcast on in my ears listening to, it was Johan from Français Authentique, Authentic French, that podcast. I'd listen to him on the way in to work. I'd listen to him while I was at work, because I would do a lot of lab work when I was doing my PhD. So I'd be there by myself doing a lot of, pipetting things and other lab work. And so I would just have a podcast on, right? I would find as much dead time in my day as I could, and I would just be listening. And then I would go to language meetups each week. There was, I think, usually 2 on, like a Wednesday or a Thursday. I'd often go to those and try and meet French people and practice my French there too. And again, as soon as I was going home, I'd be putting my earbuds in again and listening to Français Authentique, get home, open a grammar book, do some exercises, watch a TV show, and I would use Anki as well, the spaced repetition system, Anki, A-N-K-I, in order to learn vocab, right? And I would be taking slang, expressions, vocab words from all of the stuff that I'd been consuming and putting it into Anki for me to practice. So by doing that, I ended up pretty good at French within about 6 months. I was definitely fluent. I was probably about as good as I am now in Portuguese. My Portuguese hasn't really improved a great deal recently because I haven't been pushing myself at all. I kind of just speak it. I don't really read it. I don't really consume anything. I'm just too busy with kids and family and work and everything. But it got to a pretty good level pretty quickly, and I got really good at, I had a Parisian accent. At least that was what my accent was based on, I'm not saying that I fooled anyone into thinking I was French. But I often get asked, which part of France are you from, when I first said, salut, comment ça va, blah, 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 and have a conversation with someone. They'd be like, oh, you're French. And I'm like, guess again. Nah, mate, I'm an Aussie. So my point is, you can do it really quickly if you have the ability and the passion and the motivation and the discipline to put in shitloads of work, right? Like if you put in multiple hours a day studying accent, getting exposure to different accents and consuming TV shows, movies and all that jazz, listening to podcasts, studying English grammar, learning the slang, learning our expressions, I think, easily within 6 months, you could have a pretty good Aussie accent where you sound Australian. You may not sound exactly like an Aussie, but it's good enough, and people are going to get that you're trying to speak Australian English. You'll have, several hundred slang terms and Aussie expressions that you can sort of pull out and use, and again, sound more Australian, and you're going to understand Aussies. What else do you want? So, yeah, but again, if you do that, you could do that within a few months, less than a year, but it also may take you a few years. And I think that also isn't something to be ashamed of or to be embarrassed about, but really it's a journey that just keeps going and going and going. I mean, you can kind of go all in at the start if you want to give yourself a boost. You can go slow and then you can go hard when you have time, right? Like I want to get my Portuguese to a better level in the future, but I know just at the moment I'm just not motivated. I don't have the discipline, and I'm sort of just too busy with other things to fit a shitload of Portuguese study into my day, If I was studying Portuguese today like I used to study French, my Portuguese would be way better than it currently is, but I just don't have it in me currently. But I'm hoping that in the future, if Kel and I save up enough money and we're going to go to Brazil or something, then I would probably be much more motivated to be like, okay, I need to sit down and study a lot prior to going so that my Portuguese is as good as possible when I arrive. But yeah, I guess being comfortable with the fact that it's a journey. So you just start out, work out what you can do, how much time you can spend on it. I would just say try and aim to do a little bit every day at a minimum, right? Even if it's just listening to one of my podcasts, watching an episode of Home and Away or All the Rivers Run, as we were talking about. Pick a series that you enjoy with Australians in it and watch that and just get that exposure. And yeah, try and learn a whole bunch of common slang terms and expressions that Aussies use and start using them yourself so that you sound more Australian. So hopefully that helps, mate. It's one of those things. I guess it's a marathon, not a race, they say, right? But you can kind of treat it like a race if you can be bothered at the start. Okay. Maybe I'll do one more. I'm not sure how long I've been going for. Have you ever been to Turkey, or do you know anything about Turkey in Antalya? I don't know anything about Antalya. I was about to say infelizmente. Unfortunately, I switched into Portuguese. I would love to go to Turkey. I think one of the things that really draws me to Turkey, besides, there's the Turkish culture. I love the Turkish food. I lived with some Turkish girls when I was in Melbourne. And I got to learn a lot about their food and their culture when we were living together. And guzleme was one of my favorite sort of dishes that they had. There were a whole bunch of things, but that was, absolutely delicious. One of the things I would absolutely love to go and see is Göbekli Tepe. I don't know if you know of it. I assume you would know about it. I'm not sure how sort of popular it is, but it's one of the oldest kind of, what would you say, like a constructed village type small city area that we know of. It's like 12,000 years old, I think, maybe between 11 and 12,000 years old. And I've just read a lot about it, watched a lot about it, and it just seems absolutely fascinating. I'd also love to learn more about Constantinople and the Roman Empire, because I think most people don't realize that the last part of the Roman Empire was actually in that area, right? I think it depends how you decide to determine what the Roman Empire was and where it ended, but there's a lot of debate about when the Roman Empire actually ended. And I think a lot of people suggest that it was when Constantinople fell to the Ottomans, and I think that was in the 1500s. So yeah, I would love to go and see a lot of that history. You guys have so much history there. The Ottoman Empire was there, the Roman Empire prior to that, or the Constantinople and everything. I think it would just be absolutely chock-a-block full of interesting history and culture and everything like that. So yeah, definitely would love to go to Turkey one day. So I guess that's probably it, guys. Thanks for all your questions. Don't forget to come on Monday, jump on my Instagram, watch the story and add your own question. There are only a few this week. See if we can get that up to a few more next week. And besides that, I hope you have a beautiful weekend, and I'll chat to you soon. See ya.